Monday,
March 27th.
March 27th, 2023. And as we settle in for our work session, why don't we? Thank you. Why don't we have my own? Why don't we have an introduction of staff? Okay. Great. Thank you.
She was just turning it down, I think.
So
Turn it back.
going around the table of the Board of Commissioners, we have Jay Farrell, Commissioner. We have Kyle Shipp, Commissioner. We have James Vose, Commissioner. I'm Cindy Perry, the Mayor, and this is Pamela Baldwin, the Mayor Pro Tem. We tonight do not have our fifth Commissioner, John Bonnets. He's out of town, but he will be joining us by Zoom. We have, as far as staff is concerned, we have, it's my pleasure to welcome our interim town manager, Kent Jackson, and our town attorney, Paul Messick. At the other table, we have town clerk, Carrie Bailey. We have our planner. Help me out with your title. Molly, thank you. Project manager. Colby Sawyer, our communications and my heavens, is that rain?
Yep.
And emergency preparedness, which we may need tonight, Colby. And Morgan DeWitt, who is special project manager, or is that your title? Pardon? Project engineer. Thank you. So our police chief has just joined us. He's soaking wet, but he's with us. Good evening, Chief. And so what we're going to do in our work session, and I'm really glad that we've done this, because work sessions have a tendency to really get a lot done because we're engaged in more conversation and less concern about votes and things like that. So Kent Jackson is going to give us guidance through the work session on water and wastewater system development fees. And so Kent, look forward to having you lead us in this work session.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, board and staff. So on the 13th of March, we had a public hearing to receive the analysis and report from Freeze and Nichols for a system development fee update. And so, clearly this is a significant issue of consideration for the town. It is also a fairly complex question for the town. And so staff felt like it was appropriate to have this additional discussion. So as you've recognized, Molly and Morgan, have really been a great help in the past, couple of weeks, pulling together some information. So I'll acknowledge their contributions right off, and you'll hear from that later on. So kind of wanted to take this in kind of two parts of kind of reviewing or answering, discussing any lingering questions that the board might have, or that might be in the record from the March 13th public hearing on the Freeze and Nichols report. And then after that, staff has some additional information to present for the board's consideration. I will say that as far as this evening, staff is not prepared to offer a recommendation on a actual SDF fee for adoption by the board. So our intent is informational in nature, trying to provide additional perspective to help us start to narrow in on an SDF fee, or at least range of fees. And so, Mayor, if it pleases the board, if there are any lingering questions from the last session, staff will be happy to hear those and respond to those at this time.
Questions?
I don't have any questions regarding the last week, but I do have several questions I've got noted here as we go through maybe.
Okay. Sure.
I don't have any lingering questions from last time, but I did want some clarification in reference to the statement that Mrs. Smith made in terms of the cost as compared to what Friesen Nichols had indicated to us.
Sure, Mayor Pro Tem Baldwin. From my best recall, Mr. Smith was commenting, asking specifically about the demand number that was provided in the Friesen Nichols. And I think the nature of his question is that, that calculated volume of 500, I think it is 500 gallons per capita per day is considerably higher than, in his experience, what the actual usage might be measured. So I did go back and do some inspection on that. What I found is in the town's 2021 local water supply plan, we had a estimated per capita per day of 238 gallons per capita per day. Now that's going to sound alarmingly short of the 500. Where it comes in is there is a peaking factor that is used for design and planning purposes. The peaking factor is the ratio between the maximum day water usage at the water plant compared with the average day water usage at the plant. And the reasoning for that is because with design and planning, we plan for, the peak day occurrence or the peak day demand. And comparably with 2022, based on our local water supply plan, our usage was 280 gallons per capita per day. So when you apply the factor of two, peaking factor is the way that we approach the 500 gallons per capita per day. So that's the findings as far as that is concerned. And there, of course, there is rounding. I think in both cases, Freeze had rounded those numbers to 250. So that's how we arrived at the 500.
All right, thank you.
Could I,
That was a question I had. Thank you, Pam, for taking care of that. That was a question I was concerned about. Where Freeze was getting our numbers from, versus if we were that far off.
for some reason, I thought that it had something to do with the fact that Chatham Park had received a discounted or a lesser amount because it was more based on reality for them when they applied for permits, and that there had to be some sort of a statewide waiver of that. Can you clarify?
Yeah, that's correct. That's part of it as well. When Chatham Park did receive a reduced flow allowance for their residential units. That was based on a engineering study that was prepared by one of their consultants in 2019. And the state did issue a letter that reduced their volume from for a 3-bedroom single-family house from 360 gallons per day to 180 gallons per day. I think the important caveat there is currently and since 2021, the town has calculated the system development fee on a per gallon basis, which with the flow reduction resulted in a also a reduced fee. As you know, as staff has approached this update to a far extent, we want to decouple those two things. In other words, I mean, the flow reduction, will still stand because it has been, reviewed, approved, and issued by the state. At the same time, our current proposal will change the basis for the fee to the meter size. And so, that will stand to, serve in this instance, it will stand to serve both parties' interest, their interest for, reduced flow, which thereby they're able to extend to some extent, the number of units that will fit under the same volume. And then it also furthers our interest of, securing the revenue that we need to fund the capital plan.
And I noted in this, not jumping ahead much, but I noted in the study that it's about 70% of municipalities in North Carolina charge by meter size versus other methods. So.
Right.
And then actually a question on something that Tim had mentioned, I guess. So does the entire town of Pittsboro have a flow reduction now based on that letter that we had submitted for Lowe's?
We do for residential.
Okay.
Background on that is there was a request submitted by the developers of Northwood Landing for a flow reduction similar to what Chatham Park had received. When the state issued their decision on that, they elected to issue a townwide or system-wide flow reduction authorization.
Okay. And then related to our study as a whole that we approved last time, what is there things that we could do? I know we have to update it every 5 years at least, but is there action we could take that would invalidate that? Or if we receive grants, or if we updated construction costs, or, is there, I mean, I know it needs to be updated, but is there anything that would cause it to be invalid prior to the next?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I don't think so either. I mean, if there were a significant change in either the cost that you would have to pay for the improvements, or a decrease in those costs because of grants or other funding sources, then it would probably behoove you to revisit the study and change it that way.
Okay.
And politically, if you're charging more than it costs for the new development to pay for additional capacity, then there's a political issue for sure.
Sure.
But if the underlying basis for the cost of those improvements is changed one way or the other, then I would revisit the study. Seems like that would be a rational thing to do.
Okay. Yeah. And I agree.
5 years.
It can be as often as we want, I think. And we can change the fee,
Right.
Based on that study.
As long as
anytime.
you're not over that maximum that's suggested in the study.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to move into some of the additional information that staff has gathered in the past couple weeks. A couple areas we have looked into. First, we wanted to look across some neighboring utilities to examine what their current fees are, both the basis of their fee and their rates, to give the board some information and some relative information related to neighboring jurisdictions. We also did some work with the UNC Environmental Finance Division. We provided you with some literature to give some additional background on a statewide study of SDFs. Certainly happy to answer any questions with that. We will not be covering that this evening. And then we also spoke with Kara Malanzi with UNC School of Government, who is a renowned expert in this utility finance area. So we want to share some thoughts that she shared with us. So we will move into that. So as I mentioned, both Molly and Morgan helped quite a bit with some of this research. So I'd first like to ask Morgan to review with us some of the comps that she found in comparison with neighboring jurisdictions.
Thank you, Kent. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so just to kind of get an idea what other municipalities in our area do for their SDF fees. So in the analysis that we did with the UNC Environmental Finance Center, there's primarily 3 different ways that municipalities set their SDFs. It's either meter size, or it's based on the use or the gallons per day, which is what we currently do, or it's a combination of both. And that can be split up residential versus non-residential, or it can be in some kind of complicated combined metric that the municipality puts together. So just kind of an overview. First, we looked at City of Sanford, and they do theirs based on meter size, which is what our analysis was. And I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds with all these numbers because it's a lot to take in. But the City of Apex also did the same analysis for their SDFs. Those were slightly higher than Sanford's, but it was just solely based on meter size, which is what our analysis was for our.
I will interject. And I was going to say this at the outset for reference. Our current fees for a single family 3-bedroom, the standard service unit, are $1,983.60 for water, $2,217.60 for sewer. So that'll kind of give you some perspective as we're going through these other fees where we stand currently.
Thank you, Kent. That's a good point. So if you back up and look at Sanford, their 3/4 inch meter combined, their fee is just right under $3,000. So right now, our residents pay roughly $4,400 in that combined fee for water and sewer, and that's for single family residents. Apex's would be right at $5,500 for the same fee. So it dramatically changes from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So Fuquay-Varina was one that took the route of the combination methods. So they did, for non-residential, they just do flat meter fees like what we're proposing. But then for residential, they have a flat per unit fee, which is unique. It's the only one that I've seen like that. So that's 1 unit fee per, whether it's multifamily or single family dwelling. It's just all residential units. So they're the one that kind of took a different approach for that. And so just kind of to get all those numbers where it makes a little more sense to look at. So if you look at a single family dwelling for 3-bedroom, 3/4 inch meter, Pittsburgh right now is at $4,200 per the water and sewer combined. So you can see based on the meter fees, how it plays into effect with Sanford and Apex, which are just solely based on meters. And then Fuquay Varina does their residential units per just one lump sum per unit price. Holly Springs and the town of Cary, theirs was a little more complex, just based on broken down per square footage of the residential unit. So larger homes have larger SDFs. I guess that's assuming that there's more people there, they're having more capacity. And then Holly Springs also takes into account the meter. So they have kind of the two intertwined with theirs. But that's just an overview of where Pittsburgh is right now for their single family dwellings with their SDFs. The proposed maximum SDF that was provided through the analysis, I didn't include in that because it kind of skewed everything else, but that's at the top, it's a 39,000. So it is significantly more, but again, that's the maximum, just to cover all the large amount of projects that we're trying to put in the ground. So that's just a good comparison. It kind of crams all those numbers you just saw into a table that makes a little more sense. So now we're going to go through and look at just some different projects that the town has permitted over probably the last 6 months, and how our current SDFs versus other municipalities' SDFs play into that. So at Northwood Landing, there was a car wash that had a 1 inch and a 2 inch meter. But our current rate is based on gallons per day. So we charged them about $25,000. If we were in Apex or Sanford or Fuquay that had the flat meter fees, it's pretty comparable to what those fees would be. But if it was based on the analysis that Holly Springs or the town of Cary did, it would be significantly more. And you can see what the proposed max would also be there, which is, way off of that chart. But it just kind of shows that the 1 inch meter fee plus the 2 inch meter fee and how it plays into effect across the board. So the YMCA at Chatham Park, they had a 2 inch and a 3 inch meter. So the fees again are just solely based on meters from the majority of these. Our fees currently are significantly much higher because we base our fees on gallons per day. So while the YMCA doesn't have, they just have the 2 meters, but they use a lot of gallons per day. So that's why that fee is significantly higher for us. And then also Cary based on their use. So the Hampton Inn at Mosaic, this is just another breakdown comparing our current fees, which are significantly higher here because again, it's based on usage in gallons per day and not meters. Yeah, so this one and the next one are interesting to look at because the hotel has about 14,000 gallons per day and a 1 inch and a 4 inch meter. But if you look at the Lowe's Foods, it has the same meter size, but about half of the usage. And our fees are kind of equivalent with the usage because we charge them double at the hotel. But then if you look at Apex and Sanford and Fuquay Varina and our proposed max fee that's solely based on meter size, they would be charged the same for a much smaller project and would have a lot less capacity. So it's a little skewed when you look at the analysis that way. Does anybody have any questions about that? Because I think that that's a significant point that would be good to make sure is understood.
Yeah.
I do have a little, on the gallons, just to go back to the Hampton Inn, I guess I got a note on it. The gallons, is this what we received for our fees? The 168,048, is that what we received?
Yes,
Our
that
fees for
was
that?
paid. We received that that's our current fee, which is based on
And
gallons.
that was
per
just
day.
on gallons, no meter,
Right.
anything like that? Okay.
Mhm.
And that was the same with the Lowe's and the other back through here, correct?
Yes, so we received that fee for Lowe's based on their gallons per day.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
if we had these two projects come in after we adopt a new fee solely based on meters, they would have been the same.
The SDF would have been the same?
Mhm. Because they both have the same meter size.
Oh, I got you. Okay, comparing the two.
Right.
Okay. I got one other question, and it goes back to these legacy lots. Do we have a definition what a legacy lot is? in this SDF. Numerous times, it says existing legacy lots and legacy lots versus any other development. I got an idea what a legacy lot is, but I don't know that the public or anybody else is exactly, what's a legacy lot? What do we call a legacy lot?
I'm not sure that we have a written definition. That may be something appropriate for Paul to comment on. He has provided some written guidance about that.
I think it was what you asked about originally. An existing lot, it would be a legacy lot, an undeveloped existing lot.
No size related acreage or anything like, just single lot to,
Just a lot that has been created and has not been developed.
Right.
And the SDF would be applicable to new development on an existing legacy lot or a new subdivision lot. It's not the lot that triggers the SDF, it's the development of the lot. I don't think that's what you wanted to hear when you first.
Of course
asked the
not.
question. I think that's what I would interpret.
Right.
And then with the 1 inch and 4 inch meter, is that one of those for like domestic service and one for fire service? Or maybe asked a different way, do we make a distinction between water lines for fire service versus other use?
So for these two, the 1 inch was the irrigation line.
Okay,
And then the 4 inch was just the domestic for the development.
okay,
And those were just sized based on the engineering design that the
Okay.
consultant did.
all right, thank you.
Does anybody have any other questions about these?
I'll just say they're very, I'm not sure if they're helpful, but they're very good to see. I mean, they're useful to see this comparison. So appreciate the work that went into that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's one clear right way to go, really, because it is going to change it based on the type of use. But I think in Pittsburgh's case, analysis was done based on meter size intentionally. So I think I have a couple more on here. So the Commerce Center has a 2 inch meter, which I think we had a couple earlier that we looked at that had a 2 inch meter, but this is for a warehouse. So the usage is very low. It's just 1,600 gallons per day. So we did not charge them that much SDF fees compared to some of the other municipalities in the area.
I guess the question on that would be, if it's submitted as a warehouse with a 2 inch line, and we charge a system development fee based on that, and then later it changes to a water park with a 2 inch line, is there any, do these also affect a change of use? I guess, a system development fee? I think you said that right, Paul.
In theory, if you could track it, yes.
Okay,
And if the change of use doesn't change the meter size, then it
But it
wouldn't
would on the
change.
volume basis, if that's what you're going on.
right.
On the previous, I mean, the prior thing.
It would be easier to track based on meters. And this one's interesting too, for Northwood Landing Apartments. So they had a lot of meters. So, the fees based on the meter size. But they also had a lot of gallons per day because they had 312 apartment units. So we're all pretty, I mean, our existing fee is high compared to the meter fees just because of the high usage. But then you have the fees that are based, like Fuquay Arena, for example, they base theirs solely on number of residential units. So theirs is significantly higher. And then the proposed Town of Pittsburgh SDF is significantly higher than that one, just based on the meter fees as well. So that was another one to look at. And Town of Cary's is much higher because they base theirs on the type of use and the square foot. And I think that was the last project that we did an analysis on. So we just did kind of a breakdown for a lot of different projects that we had, just to show the comparison, depending on what type of project it is.
But you're not making a recommendation about the pros and cons of either way?
No, we're not making a recommendation at this time. It's just for your information.
Yeah, I think there were, that is correct. I think, there were, a few things we were hoping to see and, visualize with this. First, how do we stand currently with some of our, neighbors? So that, that gives us an idea of, do we have, are we disparate enough currently that we need to take that into consideration as we're setting a fee? Is one part of this. Then just the general, visualization of comparing where we stand. And then I thought it was very interesting with the two projects as far as using the meter fee basis, where the fees are quite a bit different under our current volume-based fee. When we go to the meter, they would be the same. So I think that demonstrates, at least one of the effects of using the meter fee basis. So this can become, somewhat complex and confusing. There were some additional metrics that Morgan had researched that we decided to kind of sift out because it became, even, kind of more complex. But this is a great representation of, what is happening, in the area as far as system development fees are concerned. So we felt like that was important. This is an important part of considering a fee. It's not the entire consideration, but an important part of it. I will kind of add in that, we know that our proposed maximum fee or our available maximum fee is quite extreme. In the UNC study, about 57% of the utilities surveyed appear to be charging the maximum cost justified amount. So, that just kind of gives another metric of, how other utilities are using the analysis for setting a fee. One of the kind of questions or considerations that has kind of come along as we've discussed this is the impact of the fee toward affordable housing.
Just before we kind of change subjects a little bit,
Okay.
is it, I was trying to see what Cary did, but they have a 480-page budget. So would it be possible? So from that UNC study, it said that if you set a equivalent, equivalent residential unit or something if you set a fee for 3/4, it has to be proportional for the other size meters based on standard calculations, which is different than what we heard before, but the same as what we heard last meeting, I think. So is that correct? That if it would have to be, we would set the, say, 3/4 inch equivalent fee, and then it would just be calculated from there by the standards.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Whatever discount is applied to the 3/4 would have to be applied to
All the others.
all the others proportionally.
And so then is it possible for us to say charge by meter size for residential development and then charge by square foot in use like Cary does for commercial development? That seems like that's possible also, correct? Or
It would seem so to me that we could have a blend of basis for the fee.
like charge but residential one way and charge commercial another way. Because I see most variation, looking at comparison and I guess I'll just say it's completely, other people's fees are completely unrelated to ours fees other than the market and the realities of the market. But it seems that most of the deviation is in the commercial side, not in the residential side. Like we would settle out somewhere in the residential side, but looking at a pool versus something else is where the things start to vary more widely in the commercial side.
That's probably the best way to answer that. I'm not aware, I've not read or heard anything that would prevent an approach like you're suggesting.
Paul.
Unless some engineer can translate a service unit like that's described in this study into some kind of square footage for commercial, I would suggest that the study be re-examined by Freeze and Nichols to come up with some kind of statement or methodology or some kind of explanation of a maximum allowable rate per square foot for commercial. Because I don't think that's in there. So if you're going to go that route, you need something to hang your hat on. Unless you can translate the service unit by meter size into some kind of, some kind of equivalence.
I think in our case, we might be able to stay under the maximum allowable by meter size, but be able to calculate it in a different way, but still be like clearly under the maximum allowed. Or say that, I mean, that's always the maximum, no matter what we calculate or create.
Slick engineering departments, I'm sure they
Yeah.
can come up with.
We also have Commissioner Bonas has his hand raised, and as does Finance Director Heather.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for whomever recognized me. And thank you also to staff for making it possible for me to participate verbally through the Zoom. I had a very similar question to what Kyle was thinking. And so Kyle, thank you so much for beginning to feel this out. My sense is that perhaps because of our need for greater need for commercial development than residential development, that perhaps we want to consider having the higher residential fee structure and a lower commercial fee, such as the square footage that method that Paul Messick is describing. And so I would agree with his suggestion that we perhaps go back to our engineers and ask them to reanalyze that. However, I think I'd have heard that we really need to pin this SDF down sooner than later. So can staff elaborate on timing and deadlines and such?
Sure, Commissioner Bonnets. Certainly with, particularly related to some of the major capital projects that also have, implications for the merger. The city of Sanford has expressed an interest in, us reaching a SDF fee, at the earliest practical time. I think, we've had more recent conversations with them, about some of the, additional information that is needed in order to be able to set a fee and feel that they are now, kind of, walking with us, so to speak, through this process and understanding that, there are certain things that we have to ascertain before the board will be able to consider setting a fee. So I think said Heather had her hand raised. Maybe Heather, do you have any different thought about that?
So no, not on that piece. My comment was going to be on the change to, if we want to change the method of assessing the fee from based on meter size to anything else. My understanding is that we would need to have Freeze and Nichols redo the study to essentially factor those calculations into that study. And then we would need to republicize, open up the 45-day window again, and go through that process again. We cannot change the calculation ourselves.
Okay, thank you. And I guess just to clarify too, I wasn't suggesting that we should control the type of development with these fees. I think there's other ways to do that, but just saying that with a 3/4 inch meter on a residential unit, we can be pretty sure about what that usage will be more closely than a 1-inch meter or say a 4-inch meter on a grocery store versus a pool versus, some other type of thing. So trying to be most fair to the variation in commercial uses that might be described by meter. But I think in residential, it's much closer for the meter size. So.
Certainly. And I think the other part of that is, at least in part, staff's answer is, based on, we have seen in this research other utilities that have a different structure, which, leads us to believe that we can move in that direction. Important question is the details, of course, of what may be required. So we'll find that information and advise the board.
Back to the setting of rates and the different size meters. And I ask because we have had two very clear but different answers. And the first person absolutely said that the rates that we were being told were the maximum, but we could set them wherever we wanted individually. And the other person said we had to apply the same discount uniformly throughout each point or each different meter size. Do we have clarity on that? Because we have been told two different things.
Yes, sorry, this is Heather again.
Thank you.
Yes, we do. So because the 3/4 inch meter is used as the basis for all the other calculations, there's a factor that's applied to that to get the other amounts for the larger meters. So you have to, when you change that, whatever the 3/4 inch rate is going to be, it's going to affect the other meter sizes equally. So you take essentially, I think like the 1 inch is maybe a factor of 2. So it's going to be double what the 3/4, so I mean, all those, they all have a factor applied to them. So it will be applied, based on that, whatever we charge for the 3/4 inch will then be, the factors will be used to calculate the remaining meter size fees.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And it's set forth in the table that was used in the report, and it's also in your materials tonight. The 1/2 and the 3/4 inch meters are considered to be one service unit equivalent. So as you get larger meters, the equivalent changes and it gradually goes up. And the fees that were calculated are based upon that service unit equivalent, based upon the 1/2 and the 3/4 being number one. So that's the methodology that was used there.
Do we have both Heather and John's questions answered then?
I do have another question, and I want to circle back to Morgan's study of comparables. Two questions there. First is simplest. Did it go beyond Holly Springs and Town of Cary and those others that were mentioned, described in the graphs?
The only other one that I reached out to that was not included was Siler City, and Siler City has not set an SDF yet, but they are in the process.
Okay, thank you. And Kent, you had said that 50% of other local governments are charging the maximum SDF.
Yeah, that was the information in the UNC 2019 survey.
Okay,
I
yes.
think 57% of the 81 utilities that were surveyed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
All right.
I think one of the main things for me is that what we currently charge is significantly under what we need to charge based on our CIP. So I think it's important that we very soon, make at least some type of correction to get us closer there, and then continue to work with on the cost of our projects and work with Sanford and work with other things on, maybe getting closer to the target But I think that, we need to make a change as soon as possible to get us on the way. And then, continue to look at this as our situation is particularly rapidly changing, I think, compared to other jurisdictions near us. But, we're,
Kyle, with that said, regarding how will this SDF be set with regard to Sanford? Would they have a hand in this game? I mean.
Well, currently, they certainly have an interest with, what the board ultimately sets. At this point, they do not have an official, role to play in this, but they do have an interest in where we end up.
and I think, so I think technically no, but practically
Right,
yes. And then I think it's relatively clear that once we merge, there would still be two different system development fees for this area and that area. So they just enacted system development fees last year, I think. So it's relatively new for them also. Or it's relatively new for them, but I think what we do would guide what would happen in the future with system development fees in this area, which for some period of time would be different than what's charged in the rest of Sanford, or in Sanford proper.
Right.
Say one other thing that staff did was some of the public comment we received and maybe some other input had to do with the fact that we chose a 20-year horizon for the CIP. So a couple things there. The statute requires not less than 10 years, not more than 20 years. So that's how we arrived at the original, set the 20 years. I did ask Freeze to go back and do a quick calculation outside of their report on a 10-year look and a 15-year look as far as the maximum fee is concerned. So for the 10-year look, the max SDF is calculated at just over $36,000. And for a 15-year, I think just because of the timing of some of the projects, the 15-year maximum allowable SDF is actually maybe slightly higher or just lower at $39,200. So we were interested to know if that would have a significant effect on the maximum allowable SDF, and it does not. So it really did not help us with trying to. No, we're researching additional information and considerations, trying to kind of target in on a range of fees. But
I appreciate you doing that, because I think it's a question that came up, but based on our lack of capacity, so much of our cost has to be front loaded. That makes sense to me, but it's good to have those numbers.
Yes. Right. So, Mayor, we are closing in on the end of our hour. And so that is, for the most part, the additional information staff had to present this evening. So we're open to the board's pleasure, but that's all our material for tonight.
Kent, thank you so much. It's at one point you were starting to speak about the board's concerns regarding equity and affordable housing. Did you have prepared thoughts that you wanted to share with us about that?
Yeah, Commissioner Bonnet. So that primarily had to do with my conversation last Thursday with Kara Malonzi at UNC. I asked her her thoughts on that. Some of her guidance was very basic and things that we already are doing. She just emphasized keeping the general fund and the enterprise fund separate as far as accounting is concerned, which, something that we already do. She did refer us and referenced Article 160D 1311 of the North Carolina General Statutes to do with community development for, some guidance on specific activities. So the sum of that is that there does appear that there are mechanisms for supporting, affordable housing initiatives as far as this fee is concerned. She used the specific example of a community using, general revenues to pay these system development fees on behalf of a affordable housing project. So that's the information I gathered from her that I wanted to share.
And then I just saw too that you included the Senate Bill 163 that would allow for exemption for certain reasons, but that's not possible now, but it may be.
Right, it may be. I did learn from her that bill or a form of it has been introduced in past
Okay.
legislative sessions and
It's not a law.
hasn't advanced. So
Is there any special treatment for communities over 55 as far as the STF is concerned?
No, man,
Okay,
it's all the same. You gotta be equal.
okay. Anything further for Kent, or got about 5 more minutes to either take a break or finish up with questions?
I guess just for next steps, I mean, I would like to see something of a correction type change like I described, but I'm curious what other board members think. I think it's going to be hard to get to. We can't put a formula in and get a number out really. So
What are the next steps to actually coming up with them?
Are you saying begin to raise it incrementally?
essentially, yeah. I mean, because we are around 4,000 now versus 40,000. So I think we need to increase it and probably, change our method to meter size. But I don't think there is a formula necessarily that says if you go to 8,000, or X, per 3/4 inch meter, but anything would get us closer to that.
But do we have the requisite amount of supportive foundational background in order to raise it to, I mean, not to stretch it to the max, but to just raise it a small amount?
Heather may be able to chime in on this as well. I mean, I would think, one thing that we may look at is we may look at a grouping of very near-term projects that we know have to be delivered in a shortly defined period of time, and use that gap to in some way start to build toward what revenue we need from an additional fee.
But I think, Mayor, to your question, we have the backup we need to charge $39,000 this evening if we wanted to.
Okay.
And then we could make other changes down the road if we wanted to also. So I think, we have the information, but unfortunately, if we don't go to the maximum, there's not a good way. I don't think even for staff to tell us how much under that we go, because that is what the study showed that we need. So it's really a judgment call from there of how how much we think the market could support at this time.
And this is Heather, and just as sort of a thing to note, if we don't increase it, the only other way that we get money on the enterprise side is from user usage fees. So that's where other money is going to have to come from, meaning increasing our water and sewer rates for, all residents. So that is a possibility, and I'm not proposing obviously any increase right now, but those are the SDF fees, and user rates are the only ways that we make money to pay for the projects that we have on the enterprise side.
Thank you for that reminder. Go ahead. No, that was,
I was about to say, what you were talking about, Commissioner Ship, is increasing them incrementally.
Mhm.
So how do we know how much we want to increase them at without some type of background or some type of reasoning as to whether we're gonna increase them $10,000,
Right.
15, or we can't just relatively just choose a figure. There has to be some basis for doing that. And I do hear Ms. Mission saying we need to definitely increase.
Sure.
So I don't know where we could get that information in order to try to not raise it to this $39,000, because I can see that being a major problem too.
To me, the best we can do is look at other jurisdictions and go near other jurisdictions and their rates, because it's similar to when staff says, you need to raise water rates by 50%. And we say, no, we can't, but that's what the need is. So we can pick a number under that we think is palatable, but it doesn't meet the needs, and it's not really based on specific things. So I think in this case, the surrounding jurisdictions, going near their maximum is probably the best we can do, because it's still far from what we actually require for our system.
When will we set that?
I hope.
I thought it was happening tonight. That's what we were going to talk about.
I think there's a little too much. I think it was a good discussion, but I would hope next meeting. But it's a judgment call. So it's a.
Commissioner
It's
Ship,
ultimately up to us as a board.
Yes.
I'm sorry, John, what?
Commissioner Ship, are you saying next meeting as in 7 o'clock or next meeting as in 2 weeks from now?
Oh, sorry. 2 weeks from now. Yeah. Although, yeah, it'll give us some time to make up a number.
Another question I have really quick. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can we set a SDF? Just like Pam said, 10,000. Can we set a SDF in 2 weeks and say, hey, we're going to start at 10,000 and amend it later?
Yes. Yeah, now that we've completed the analysis and the study, it becomes more of a budget amendment process.
Up to the max.
Up to the
Yes, yes.
maximum.
The longer we wait, the less the money we're losing.
Correct.
On that 4,000 or whatever amount of gallons now.
And you would need to set a water SDF and a wastewater SDF separate.
Correct.
So Commissioner Farrell, I think from what you just said, then maybe that's a justification for setting it at the max rate and then ratcheting back down as we learn more.
No, John, I don't think I would want to. I was more or less using the $10,000 as a beginning number. And if we needed to amend later, higher or lower, but I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be any lower.
Well, I just heard you say, after you mentioned that then we would need to understand that we're losing potential revenues as time goes on.
Meaning development that's coming into the system as we're, waiting.
Yes. As we're adjusting it and feeling it out, I think your observation is right, that if we set it at 10, hypothetically, then we're losing the potential revenue for every SDF fee that is paid, while we get a sense of the market, if that's our goal.
I fear that we need to carry this conversation
Just a second.
forward.
John, I don't think that's what he's saying. He's saying we're charging $4,000 now. So, and we're not charging 40,000. So if we charge 10 in 2 weeks, that would be an improvement, but not, I don't think any of us here are
Oh.
suggesting to go
That's
to
fine.
39,000. From our current fee to 10,000 would be taking some of that revenue that's on the table.
Got it. And I just realized that it's 7:00.
All right, so we will convert now from our work session to our regular session. And so let us invite the public in, assuming that that is the case. And I'd like to thank staff for helping us to understand to understand this very
Yeah.
complex situation.
Yes, thank you very much, staff, and I will have to bid adieu. I have personal commitment this evening, so I'm sorry I won't be able to join the 7:00 meeting, but that's just as well because I wouldn't be able to vote remotely anyway. So thank you, friends.
Thank
Very
you for
good.
joining us, John.
Mayor,
Very helpful.
special meeting and then we're gonna start our regular.
Okay, could we have a motion to adjourn the special? Moved by Pamela Baldwin,
Second.
seconded by James Vose. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, thank you. Motion carries.